Warning: the program you are about to watch is intended for those with an open mind. We speak freely and openly about topics that affect the well-being of all people. Our intention is not to offend, disrespect, or harm anyone, nor are our views hateful in any way. With that being said, if you are overly sensitive, lack independent thought, or follow the masses blindly, this show probably isn't for you. Enjoy! Hey, what's up, everybody? It's Stupid Steve and Ian Dybel, and we are on episode 1 of Penny for Your Thoughts, our weekly show that we'll do here on YouTube. And we did a prelude last week. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and now we're really digging into it. And we're talking today the Rothschild family. What do you think, Ian? Think it'll be a good show?
I'm just excited to get on with it. The Rothschild family are key. This is why we chose the Rothschild family for episode 1,
Right.
because once you understand all about this family, I think everything else just comes together a little bit better. So yeah, we're just excited to
I
bring
mean,
you the
no,
Rothschild
no
family.
better place to start, right?
Yeah,
I mean, if you're
yeah,
gonna
definitely.
dig into the world of conspiracy and some of the things, you have to know who's running it all, right?
Yeah.
So, they allegedly control 80% of the world's total wealth. They're worth $500 trillion, and you can't find anything on these people today. But we're going to dig into the history of the Rothschilds, and we're going to bring it to you and try to present it to you in a way that you can kind of grasp who this family is and what they are. So let's get into it. The Rothschild family.
This is your last chance. After this, there is no turning back. You take the blue pill, the story ends. You wake up in your bed and believe whatever you want to believe. You take the red pill, you stay in Wonderland, and I show you how deep the rabbit hole goes.
So as Steve mentioned, you can't actually find anything up to date. Like, I think the most recent thing I've seen is that in 1989, the Queen of England promoted Evelyn de Rothschild as the head of the finance. So basically, they control the purse strings to England. But after that, it's kind of almost as if they don't exist. But we know they do. So tonight we're going to go to the history and to show you guys, hopefully, how we believe that they control basically the world, and if not, they have a fairly big say in it.
Yeah,
Um,
definitely a fairly big say in what we say and do. I mean, when you start getting into some of the notes that you took down and some of the transcript and stuff, it's crazy, especially when you get into Wikipedia and you start to hear it. I mean, it goes all the way back to 73, I believe. 1700 is when it kind of starts, and
mhm.
just the amount of power and power they had in the wars and things like that. But let's get into it, man. I mean, what do you
Yeah.
got to start out with?
So you mentioned that the alleged worth of this family is $500 trillion, and that they allegedly control 8% of the world's total wealth. Owner of all the central banks in the world, one of 5 richest families in the world. So there are another 4 families, and we'll maybe do podcasts on them later on. They're included. This is what blew my mind straight off the bat. They're included in the CIA website as one of the 13 bloodlines. So whatever that means, again, we might do a podcast on that. So these families are considered as bloodlines, like that. I mean, it's okay being considered as wealthy and that, but when you start talking about families as having different blood, or I know it's something we'll need to look into, but I just thought it's a good little, and for all means check out the CIA website just to show that we're not, lying to you guys. Um, so this family have 153 species slash subspecies of insects named after them. They have 58 birds, 18 mammals, 14 plants. They have food. They have street names. They have vineyards and even an island just off Antarctica named Rothschild Island. How about that, Steve?
I know, right? I mean, you don't you're wealthy when you have your own islands and your own species and subspecies of animals named after you. You have birds and all kinds. I mean, it's crazy. Food,
Yeah.
street names. I mean, when you're that big, uh,
Mhm.
I mean, that's crazy.
Yeah.
Mind blowing, really. I didn't know nothing about the subspecies and the birds and mammals and all that stuff. I
Yeah.
didn't even know about the island. So, I mean, that was pretty interesting. I need an island off in Antarctica.
Yeah. So yeah, as Steve mentioned, 1744 was when we're going to start our story, because for
Right.
me, obviously there was Rothschilds previously, or something that I have, and this is unconfirmed, people, so don't take this part of it as fact, but I have seen and heard claims that this family were once called the Bauer family, Bauer, but due to, and this is where it gets alleged, them doing some things in their communities and they weren't very well liked, they changed their name to Rothschild. I've also heard that it could have been because they wanted to have a closer, what is it, like to do with Israel, because obviously these are a German Jewish origin family, and the name change to have it, closer to the Israel, the red shield sign above their door. They changed their name from Bauer to Rothschild. Then they actually lived in a house that was called Zum Rothschild. So that's where the translating coming to Rothschild. That's where they got that. So they're a family of German Jewish origin. And we'll start with a guy called Meyer Amschel Rothschild. So if you guys could just think of this guy as like the dad figure, he's at the top of the family tree for tonight's show. And it's also good to mention that in 1744 in Germany, then it was a very anti-Semitic country, and it's kind of funny. It's not funny, but I mean, with the World War II and Hitler and things, it's like almost as if they have a deep-rooted anti-Semitism thing in Germany. And Jews were kind of segregated to a certain part of Frankfurt where the Rothschilds were from, and they were treated pretty poorly. It was kind of slum, poor neighborhoods. And I'm only telling you guys this because maybe this was their strength and like kind of mindset behind their rise in power and wealth. So yeah, I don't know if you've anything to add on that, Steve, if you've heard that before. Or...
Well, I mean, I just no, I didn't. I didn't know that in particular that they were. But I knew that there was a lot of. There's always been anti-Semitism towards Jew people. Have always had a problem with the Jewish culture, and we're gonna dig into a little bit of why here in a minute. But
Mhm.
yeah, maybe that is. I mean, when you're tired of struggling, they seen a spot here, and we're about to get into it in a second, where they could infiltrate, where they could profit, and maybe this
Mhm.
is where they learn to work in the shadows, and they learn to, not let people know their workings and what they're doing, and we're going to talk about that a lot throughout this episode, as how they kind of always stayed in the shadow, and I mean, yeah, a lot can be learned from struggle. Right. I mean,
Yeah.
a lot of life lessons to be learned there. And this
Mhm.
was in Frankfurt, Germany. Is that
Yeah.
right? Yeah. So that's
Yeah.
when it all
Frankfurt.
started, was in Frankfurt.
Yeah.
And they
So
established the banking business in like the 1760s.
yeah. So it's also key to add that in this times, and I don't even know about more so now, but this family, and also just not just this family, but most Jews were assigned to working with money, because working with money in those days was seen as a dirty job. And
Right.
I don't know for sure. I've heard this theory that it's like a Christianity thing where, uh, in the Bible, I know that sin is considered debt is considered a sin, and possibly maybe the temptation if you're working with money and you could steal. So it was just considered a dirty job, and the Jews were
Well,
given
it,
that.
it says basically it's when it talks about money, the biggest line I can come up from the Bible is with money is you cannot love one and follow the other, talking about money and God. Money was always a very sinful, dirty thing because it corrupted so many people. So
Yeah.
I mean, I don't think the Jewish people in the Jewish community were immune to this, and it's been going on since way before, since Old Testament. They've always had their hands in money. The Jewish culture has always had their hands in our dollars and in our currency ever since the beginning of time.
Yeah. And again, I don't know much about the whole IQ and the spectrum and that, but we hear about Jews as being like stereotypically more clever than other people
Right.
and other races. And I'm just wondering, this is just my own thoughts, maybe I'm wrong, but it's like if you're working with money for generations and you're
Right.
counting and you're doing all these maths and sums, like it's possibly a trait that gets passed into like your genes, your IQ gets passed down. So
It
it's
has
just
to, right? I mean, when you
has
start
to be.
thinking about that stuff, it has to be in your blood that
Yeah.
when you're generations, this is what you do. You work with currency, you work with money. You're very sly, you're very sneaky, you're very,
Hmm.
I'd hate to use those words, but I mean that's just the way it is. It's
Hmm.
like you said, for generation, it has to be embedded into their culture.
Yeah.
It's no different than an Asian kid that knows how to play the cello better than anybody else. It's like you're born to play the cello. It's the same thing with money and the Jewish community. It's just like that's just what you do.
Mhm. Yeah. So again, we'll start with the father figure. Let's call him tonight, the Mayor Amschel. He, at 11 years of age, he lost his parents due to smallpox, and he was kind of taken under the wing of Oppenheimer, who was, in what I've read, he was like kind of the main banking guy. Like he was well known in Germany, and he was a rare coin dealer. He established European banking and finance houses, and Meyer was taken under the wing. And at 13 or 14 years of age, he started an apprenticeship in banking. So it's very young, but it just shows you in those days what kind of ages was seen as like to get into the businesses. So Meyer went on to marry a woman named Gutel Schnapper, and they went on to have 10 kids, five sons and five daughters. We also have the family tree, which is handy to look at.
Yeah, and I'll
So
pull
if you
that up
want
so
to,
you guys can see the family tree, which is very deep. And
yeah,
yeah, there's five sons and five daughters. That's crazy. I had 10 kids, and
yeah.
yeah, I'll let you go into it. And I got some stuff on the five sons as well.
So with the family tree, you can see that Meyer and his five sons spread out over Europe. Um, Also, another key thing to add is that um, they were told by Meyer, and if you want to insert the clip with Meyer in that film in 1934, when Meyer is sat on his bed and he's basically telling his five sons to spread out over Europe and go to the five capital cities, the main five capital cities at that time, which were Paris in France, Naples in Italy, Vienna in Austria, and London in England, and the fifth son stayed to help himself with the Frankfurt branch.
And all
Um,
four corners of Europe, all
yeah,
five corners of basically all over Europe.
yeah. So the clip shows depicts that plan.
Yeah, I'm
Um,
gonna go
oh,
ahead and play that clip. I'll go ahead and play that clip right now for you guys to see. I just want to put it
okay.
out there. Here it is.
You are five brothers. I want you each to start a banking business in a different country. One to go and open a house in Paris, one in Vienna, one in London. Choose the most important centers, so that when money is to be sent from here to London, let us say, you won't have to risk life and gold. Amschel, here in Frankfurt, will just send a letter to Nathan in London saying, pay so-and-so. And that will be offset by loans from London to Frankfurt. Understand? Yes. In your day, there will be many wars in Europe. And nations that have money to transport will come to the Rothschilds.
Don't talk anymore, the doctor.
I'm giving advice to our sons, Mama, that the doctor cannot give. Remember, unity is strength. All your lives you must stand by one another. No one brother must be allowed to fail while another brother succeeds. Your five banking houses may cover Europe, but you will be one firm, one family, the Rothschild.
Fun fact for you feminists out there is that Meyer also told his sons to marry into the family. So a lot of marrying of their second cousins and cousins, and no wealth was left to the daughters. So I don't know how you feel about that, guys. I always like to poke fun at some liberal people because they laugh at us for our conspiracy beliefs and things. But if they got on board and maybe their willpower and passion could maybe help along and expose this stuff even further. So
Well, it would definitely help. I mean, the problem is the closed-mindedness. But I mean, there it is right now, right there. I mean, that's the way it used to be. Not only with the royal families
Mhm.
breeding within their own bloodlines. It was like that back in the day. And like you said, well, you didn't say it on this one, but we was talking yesterday about how some of these Rothschilds look not right,
Mhm.
right? So
Yeah,
then their bloodline with that incest going on, you can see some crazy things. But yeah, I
yeah.
mean, feminists, how do you think about what do you think about that? You know, did not want the women to have anything to do with their
Yeah.
money.
And yeah, to touch on you saying about like they were pretty ugly people because of that, marrying. And if you know that the Simpsons character, Mr. Burns, was actually modeled off of Jacob Rothschild, who I believe is still alive today. I
Yeah,
think he's the one that's kind of the face for them, although we're saying we can't find much on them. There is that clip of him being confronted outside his car by a news reporter, is kind of getting questioned on the New World Order and things, but pretty much that's about it. So yeah, it's just I like to add little facts in like that because it's interesting to see how way back in the day how these people thought and what their beliefs were and what they did to keep money within the families. And like you just touched on, it wasn't just royalty that done that, it was this family also.
well, if you were powerful people, you wanted to keep it within the family, and they did a
Yeah.
good job of that, and they still do to this very day.
So that brings us to what I believe is their first real significant rise of wealth, because before this, it was basically they were rich, but they weren't as, they weren't globally rich. They weren't, known as being one of the superpowers or families, whatever. Then, but this is for me, this is what brought it to. So we now come to 1789, and that was the year where France, basically the French Revolution, and Meyer was basically given the opportunity to fund any battles or wars, and was he going to stay impartial and fund both sides, or was he going to stick with Germany or France? Because obviously having the branches there, and I think he chose to stay impartial so that he could fund both sides, which is a clever decision for wealth. So having sent the four sons out to the four European capital cities. That's basically what gave him a rise, because then no matter where the battle is, you're funding the arms, the weapons, basically money as well. And, with war comes basically prosperity. It's still used today, that tactic.
Oh yeah,
Um,
when you are able to fund a war, then the governments of that said country is instantly in your debt because they owe you. I mean, the weapons aren't
mhm,
free. Not back then
mhm,
they weren't, and not today. Even not today. I mean, bombs and missiles are ridiculously expensive. But yeah, if you
mhm,
fund wars, not only are you able to make money off of what they owe you and interest and
mhm,
things like that, or what they paid for the weapons and the cost of war,
mhm.
but you're able to kind of come out on top when you fund both sides because you're able to kind of depict and figure out where the money's going to be after because the victorious country is going to be rich.
Yeah.
So yeah, tactics still
Uh,
used to this very day.
Yeah, and you touched upon the arrows. I find that quote basically that you brought up Psalms. I had heard it, but I didn't know that it was in the Bible. But I know that the five arrows have appeared in connection with the Rothschild symbols a lot of times. It's on a coat of arms that Nathan, the one that was in London, he petitioned to get, and I'm sure it's above the bank that he ran. But there are plenty of, I think the Rothschild family name itself, anything that they've got their name on, and it's on like the heading, there's an arrow in the logo. Um, and Gutel, the mother, has also said that she has referred to her sons like five arrows in a quiver, which they use like tools to further their wealth and power.
That symbol is a symbol of power. It's a symbol of we hold power here with these five arrows and yeah, they love their symbology.
Hmm. Yeah. So that was the first significant rise. When you're funding both sides of the war, you're going to be, it's going to increase your wealth. But for me, this is where it changes. For me, when I found this out, and I found this out very early into my conspiracy, this is 3 years ago, and this is one of the very first facts that I heard. And at the time, it didn't mean anything to me, but now it makes so much sense, and it's probably consolidated my beliefs in why this family are so big, is the Battle of Waterloo, 1815.
Yeah.
So with Nathan Rothschild in London and James von Rothschild in Paris, they were able to fund both sides of the battle. And more importantly, they had an informant who knew who had won the battle before anyone else. So you can imagine nowadays, like any wars and things, there's Twitter, there's Facebook. It's just a fingertip away, any news, and it's just there. But in these days, obviously, you'd probably horse and cart, I would imagine,
Right.
and like to try and get your story to the nearest stall to get it written up and printed. So with Nathan in London, and is it James von
James, yeah.
Rothschild in
So I mean, just to put
Paris?
some emphasis on that, here's these two different Rothschilds. Okay, they're the ones who are changing the money. They're the ones who are exchanging the money. They're ones who own the banks. Okay,
Mhm.
this is they're in the governments are in debt to these two people, and these two country or these two countries are fighting with one another. So where are
Mhm.
they going to get their money? Both from
Mhm.
Rothschilds. It's genius what he did.
Yeah, and with this next bit, this is the genius part. So when a war is being fought, and even to this day, when you're able to manipulate the media, and basically you could say that, say, well, for instance, we'll take the Battle of Waterloo. When Britain really won, the day or two before it, James and Nathan could release in the media that actually France were winning, and that would make the British gold supply and the currency fall to very little, and they would go in and buy it all up when it was really cheap. And then when the real result of the war, the battles get announced, the pound and the gold shoots through the roof. And it is said that with this manipulation alone, that they multiplied their net worth, which was seen to have been at 100 million, and
Right.
this was 1815.
Well, this is like the first instance really that you have that where this tactic is used, where this buy low, sell high tactic, and they use this throughout all of history, every war, every major event, everything that happens. If something bad happens to your country, it drives the currency down. This is where the problem comes. This is where the problem lies, and why people have a problem with the Rothschilds is because they create those problems. They create those events throughout history to drive the cost of the money of the currency of the said country down. That way they can buy it low and then they can build it up and then they control the finances that way. The Battle of Waterloo, why it's so significant is because this is the first instance where we actually see them using that tactic. Soros uses this. A lot of the Rockefellers use this tactic. It's going on today with coronavirus, right? It's going on today with the virus running, pandemic running rampant and everything. And when every time in the U.S. when a city gets destroyed, it drives the cost down of everything, and then they're able to swoop in and buy it out. What's going on today? It's the same thing with coronavirus. I hate to get into that. I don't want to go too far down this path, but um, it's shutting down small businesses where people can make their own independent money. And it's rising up large corporations. So
Mhm.
basically, it's the same thing they do with banks. They'll banks will go bankrupt. They'll buy those banks out, and then they'll own them, and then now they own everything. So this is the first instance where this was actually used, and I find that interesting. That's why it's the big one. That's why Battle of Waterloo is the one you have to point at, because this is
Mhm.
where they gained their massive wealth, and they started to use this type of tactic.
Mhm. Yeah, so like I said, their net worth in 1815 was said to be 100 million. So
Which is
that for that for me is just mind blowing, because, and this
and
is
hold on,
like I
hold on.
said,
What year was this? When 1815. So $100 million
1815.
in 1815 is like
Yeah.
that's ridiculous.
Well, actually, you mentioned it. My wife was watching one of our. She loves these serial killer documentaries, and she was watching one just last night. And there was one in 18. It was in the early 1800s, earlier than 1815. And she asked me how much $9 was in today's money, and $9 was $216. So
I mean, you do the
it's,
math. You can only
you
imagine
do the
what a
math,
hundred
I know.
million. Jesus.
I
I mean,
know.
it's in the billions and billions of dollars. I
Yeah.
mean, just established your power right there.
Yeah. So for me, that, like I said earlier, why this consolidates my belief in that these people are still run the world, or at least have a very big say in it, because if you're worth 100 million in 1815, unless you've made some really silly mistakes with your money, then you've got to be up there still.
Right.
And also, you're going to want to have a say in the way the world's run. We know how the world's run, kind of, with corporations running the government and leaning on them. So they'll not just be sitting back in their house sipping on cocktails and chilling out. They'll want to say, like, have their say on the way the world, the direction the world is run. A couple of quotes that I've got, that I love throwing quotes in, because for me it shows the kind of mentality and mindset of these people.
Well,
And
I pull these
also,
up as you say them, but one is really, really, it's just a powerful quote. We'll have to stop on a couple of these and talk
yeah,
about them, but I'll make sure to pull these up as we go
yeah.
through them.
So not only it's like the mindset of them, and it's just so bold and brash, but
Yeah.
it's like they obviously didn't foresee the internet coming in 2000, so they probably never thought these quotes would see the light of day again. But Nathan, the London branch son, was quoted saying, "I care not what puppet is placed upon the throne of England to rule the empire on which the sun never sets. The man who controls Britain's money supply controls the British Empire, and I control Britain's money supply."
Powerful
Buy when the
statement.
Sorry, this bit is like,
No,
it's
go ahead.
attached, but this bit is actually key. Listen to this part. Buy when the cannons are firing, sell when the trumpets are blowing. So what he's basically saying there is, while there's war going on, we are buying up the stocks and the bonds and your currencies and your gold when it's very low and it looks dark. It looks like your country's going into a loss, and then boom, the actual result of the war comes out. Britain win the war, and everyone's celebrating, and they're selling off their stock,
Right.
and at a higher price. So it's
It's
just,
so crazy that that's such a bold statement. First, he's saying, if I control, it doesn't matter who's in charge. It doesn't matter who the president is, the king, whoever's in charge, whoever wants to sit themselves on the throne. I control the money, so I have the power. He just came out and
yeah,
said it. This is a direct quote from him. And then not only that, when the bullets are being fired and the shots are being fired in the battlefield, that's
mhm,
when you buy, because everybody's down, because everybody's suffering, right? And then you sell when the trumpets are blowing.
mhm.
So bold, like you said. It's so bold to just come out and just say that.
There's actually a good documentary I watched in preparation for this podcast. It's on YouTube, 50 minutes long. It's called the Rothschild family something. It's maybe just the Rothschild family documentary, and there's a scene in it where Rothschild stood against like a pillar in, like, basically a frenzy of men with their tickets. Like, I assume they're like stocks and shares, and they're like running over to him and saying, "What do I do? What do I do?" And he's like, "Sell, sell." Everyone that runs up to him, he's like, "Sell." And he's creating this frenzy where everyone's panicking, and the stocks and the gold and things are going lower and lower. And then he finds out the real result of the battle, and he's buying up and buying up behind everyone's back.
Well, they do this now too with Soros. This is how Soros came to power. I mean, this is how these elitists do it. They're so invested into these countries. It's this godlike power they have. They can literally just sell everything, pull their stocks out, and bankrupt a country. If they wanted
Yeah.
to bankrupt America, which is supposedly the richest country in the world right now, all they would have to do is basically sell all their stocks and pull everything out, and we would be eating out of garbage cans. That's how much power they have.
Yeah.
It's insane, and that's how they crashed the stock market back in 1929. That's how they did it. That's how they created the Federal Reserve. They created a big panic and a big stir. Everybody started selling everything, selling all their. They started pulling all their money out of the stock market, and it just crashed. It just made it crash. And then they come in and swoop in and they buy everything up for basically pennies, and they build it back up again. It's like a wash, rinse, repeat throughout history. Ever since, what you're talking about, the Battle of Waterloo, ever since the 1800s, this has been going on.
Yeah. And I think you touched on it just there, so maybe you can pull me out again here a bit. Well, basically, conspiracy theorists get a bad rap for looking into every event and saying, "Oh, it's corrupt, it's conspiracy, it's been staged." But can't you see now, after listening to what we're talking about tonight, that if these people in power know that, like, for me, the Battle of Waterloo, they stumbled upon it. It was a natural occurring event, as far as I know, and they manipulated the stock market and multiplied their net worth by 10 times. Do you not believe that maybe any events, and I'm not saying them all, maybe 9/11 is one that we'll all look to, that they can maybe think, we could do that again. We could make it happen.
Well,
Like
that's what
wars.
you never let a good crisis go to waste. There's been plenty of people
Yeah.
out there that said that. The problem, that's not the problem, okay? The crisis itself, yeah, we have to deal with that. It's the problem that people have, and the problem that I have with these wealthy people and these elitists and why they're so evil. They create the crisis. That's the issue. They know exactly how to profit off of things. They create the problem. They profit off the problem. Then they go in and they solve the problem after they become rich off of it. And the people are the ones, us little pawns, us nobodies, we're the ones who suffer. And it's gotten to the point now where it's not even about the money and even more. I mean, they can't get any more money in their pockets. How much richer can they get? Now it's all about power and control. It's almost like they enjoy this, like it's a game to them now. That's where the conspiracy, that's where people, should really dig into this stuff and really look. That's why people need to understand and know what it's all about, because this is what every major event, it doesn't happen. Every president you get, it doesn't happen by accident. Every election, every time a city is on fire, we have a lot of chaos going on in the whole entire world right now. There's so much division. That's all created by these people who benefit and profit and gain control and power over it. That's the point we're trying to make, and that's why we do this right here.
Yeah. One of the better phrases I've heard since I've been into conspiracies is follow the money trail. And you actually can, like, for before I got into this stuff, I would have imagined that, the money of these people, like, for instance, Bill Gates, and like you mentioned, George Soros, you can actually check where their money is going. They put their names on these things. And when you can follow that, and you can see that some CEO of companies are dropping out just before events, like the one that we're in just now. One of the very first things I remembered was all these CEOs in January leaving their posts. Another good one, which we'll definitely do a podcast on, is the Las Vegas shooting. A very good one to check on, following the money trail. If you look into that money-wise in stocks and shares, you can see that was it actually, created, like you said, create the mayhem and solve the chaos and whatever.
Well, because then we always have to lean on them. We always, I mean, we just had there's $1 trillion in the U.S. that just got approved yesterday for stimulus package for relief. Every American's getting $600. Okay, you're talking $1 trillion.
Yeah.
And that's our money, really. I mean, because we have to pay taxes, a ridiculous amount of income tax and different taxes and things like that. But when you start to look at the paper trail and you start to look at the money, and we're sending billions of dollars to other countries. We're sending it all over the world. We're giving corporations who don't need money. We're giving museums and things like that, place where elitists can launder money. If you look into that stuff, I mean, some of these paintings that these people sell at these art shows, that's how they launder money. That's how they move money without you knowing. They pay millions of dollars for a piece that is just absolute garbage. Like, it's not art. Look into that stuff and do your own research, because that's how they move money without you knowing, without using banks, without leaving a paper trail. They'll buy this, it'll be a trash can with a turd next to it, and they'll be like, oh my God, that's the most beautiful art ever. I'm going to pay $30 million for this piece. Look into that stuff, because that's actually how they do stuff. And it's a shame they get away with it. And like you said, follow the money. And what's crazy, though, about the Rothschilds is you can't. This family's worth $500 trillion, and you can't. There's no proof of them. There's only one Rothschild in the top 100 richest people or something like that, or top 10. I don't know. But he's worth $11 billion. This family owns every central bank in the world. Where's the money?
Yeah. So after the Battle of Waterloo,
to get back on track here, right?
Yeah. After the Battle of Waterloo, that was 1815. We head on to 1888, the conquest of Africa. Now, I touched on earlier that the Battle of Waterloo probably was the first of the bunker wars, but the reason why the conquest of Africa is known unofficially as the first of the bunker wars is because for me, I did say Battle of Waterloo is like a natural occurring event. I don't think there was any conspiracy involved in it. I think it was natural that France and the revolution and things, and they just stumbled across, oh, wow, we can make money here. And this is where we head to 1888, and they implemented that manipulation again. So in 1888, the Rothschilds, along with Cecil Rhodes, a British mining magnate and politician based in South Africa, went to the Crown of England and asked for an army to invade Botswana and Zimbabwe. They went on to kill 60,000 Zimbabweans with the newly invented machine gun. They took the land, they overthrew the government, and this again is known as the first of the bunker wars. They then went on to form De Beers Jewelers in 1889, a year later, and crippled Botswana because most of their diamonds come from Botswana. They then ran this is an interesting bit, and I love this. I shouldn't love it, but I think it shows that, and I've been guilty of this before, where you see David Beckham with the new cell phone, and you're like, oh, I must get it, and Jay-Z with the new trainers, and it's like, oh, you fall into peer pressure. But this one really highlights the tactics that they've used. So after overthrowing Zimbabwe and Botswana and now owning 90% of the world's diamonds, they then ran advertising campaigns pushing that diamonds be used in engagement rings. That's crazy, is it?
Yeah, it is. And the whole diamonds and the whole invasion into Africa and I don't know. It's there's a lot of diamonds and gold, right? That's what it's about, diamonds and gold and the control of Africa. And just when you look at, it's so crazy that Africa could be the richest country in the entire world with diamonds and gold, right? But yet they are the poorest. They're still living in tribes. It's crazy, and I think it has large in part to do with the Rothschilds going in there and taking over Africa and in 1888. Because they knew how much gold and diamonds were there. They knew how much profit they could make off of this continent, and they knew that they had to make sure that the people didn't rise up in any way, shape, or form. And here we are in 2020, and there's still people in tribes in Africa living extremely poor, can't afford shoes or clothes or even food to eat. But yet you are the richest continent on the entire planet. That's not by mistake.
No, definitely not. I think it's basically they've done that, and they've used Africa to basically, like, every year we have charities all the time, but we have Red Nose Day, I think it is, where we all donate money to Africa and the starving children. Then they run those advertising campaigns where you're watching your TV programs at night, and in between the programs, it's like a starving kid with their bones showing, and they're starving, and it's like, it does pull at your heartstrings. But the more I think about it and the more I get into stuff like this, it's like they're doing that on purpose, and purposely, like, the Rothschild family could solve the Africa problem.
It could solve the world's problems, really. But when you look at
yeah.
Africa alone, I mean, that's where they profited off of. I mean,
Yeah.
you're going to get into the percentage of diamonds and things like that have been moved around, right? I mean, they have what? Like upwards of, what is it, 80%, 90% of the world's diamond
Well,
share?
at that time, De Beers controlled 90% of the world's diamonds, but they only released 10% of them
Right.
for for people to buy, which obviously hikes up the price, makes them more like limited edition type style. So,
I mean, you got this rare mineral, this diamond that's worth just so much, unbelievable amounts of money, and gold for that matter. And it's a shame. And this is the problem. This is one of many problems. We discussed a couple, but this is the problem. This is why people think the Rothschilds are so evil. This is why they are evil and dark in their workings. Richest continent on the planet, but yet the poorest living conditions you can possibly imagine. Diseases run rampant, people dying by droves, and nobody pays attention to this shit. Nobody. No, and they like you said, they see the poor kid on the screen and they donate $5 to try to give this kid some meals. It shouldn't even be that way, but because of these very opportunistic beings that go in here and do this stuff, and they're living they have more money than they can ever imagine why people are starving to death. They could single-handedly stop the problem in Africa, but they choose not to.
Yeah. Yeah, so that for me, that kind of ties up the wealth side of things where they got it. The Battle of Waterloo was key in the conquest of Africa, and I've got down a few other things on banker wars with General Wesley Clark, 7 countries in 5 years. Check that video out. And basically, this tactic that they've used it time and time again, even up to present day. You just touched on off air before we came on about Obama and is consistently bombing the Middle East, and I'm sure I heard that he brought America from 2 wars to 7 in his 8 years, and he only got that because he called them civil disputes or something and not wars. Like he didn't have to go
Well,
through Congress.
and it's just, it's self-created problems, and it's people that don't, it's a shame that people don't pay attention to this type of stuff. It's a shame that people are just turned off by it and don't want to dig in and do any research, because I guarantee you 90% of the world's problems are self-inflicted and done on purpose. With the Barack Obama, with the bombing in the Middle East in particular, we had the migrant crisis. Everybody was talking to migrant crisis. Everybody's got to go somewhere. Everybody's millions of displaced families, but not one single person is looking why they're displaced. What is going on here? It's because Barack Obama was dropping hundreds of thousands of bombs within a year's time in the Middle East, blowing up their hospitals, blowing up their schools, blowing up their houses, saying ISIS is in there. We have to do it. ISIS, ISIS, ISIS. And it creates the problem. That's just an example of how our rich and powerful people use others to create problems and profit off of that. What's in the Middle East? Why do you need to drive everybody out of there? Oil. Right? We want their oil without any kind of conflict or whatever. We don't want Saddam Hussein in there, trading in something other than a US dollar, which he wanted to do, and not giving up his oil supply. What do we got to do? We got to blow up the Middle East and gain that oil supply, not to mention their poppy fields. It's the same thing with Gaddafi. We had to go in it. We wanted their shit. So we went in there and we basically destabilized we toppled their dictator and took over their supply of oil. I mean, it all comes down to and I think some people are aware, but a lot of people don't want to look into the why, right? Like, they don't want to do the research to trail back as who's doing this stuff. It's the peaceful Democrats. It's Obama, People hate Donald Trump, but he's gotten us out of wars, right? He's avoided conflict. But, it's always in the name of safety. It's always in the name of like, we got to be the world's police. We got to make sure everybody's okay. These people are being heard or whatever. But I mean, hey, that's a show. Maybe I'm going down a path that I shouldn't be going down. But the point being is most of these crises are self-inflicted. They're done purposely. I guarantee you, if the elites and the governments would get out of our affairs, we would be a lot better off in life. I guarantee you at least 90% of our problems would be solved. There would be no more war. There is no war unless they want war. Did you read that quote?
Yeah, I was just about to say that. There's a quote we've left out. Gutel Schnapper, the mother, was also quoted saying, "If my sons did not want war, there would be none."
Right. That's the powerful one to me. That's like, holy shit. If my sons didn't want no war, there would be none.
Yeah.
Okay. And it's crazy how we as people fight over shit that makes no sense. They want us to do this stuff. It's like the race stuff that's going on right now. It's so fake. It's so unbelievable. People don't think that way anymore. It's 2020. People don't care about what color your skin is. There's more multiracial families than there ever has been. You are hard pressed to find a racist person out there anyways. But yet through media manipulation and through what they want you to believe, they sound these trumpets that we need a call to action, and they cause this division, and then they profit off of it. And the people are the sheeple in the world simply don't want to pay attention. They just don't want to see it. Hopefully shows like this, hopefully what we're doing today, Ian, will open a few eyes. Definitely. We need to red pill the hell out of people, because then you have to see it all.
Yep. And like you said, once you start seeing like the tactics that they're using, you start to be able to predict the news, and you see through their lies. It's like a filter being lifted. They always have to create a bad man. Since 2000 with 9/11. And there's been the Taliban, and it was Al Qaeda, and it was ISIS.
Well, there's always a boogeyman. whether it
Yeah,
be
that
COVID, whether it be
yeah. Well, now it's the
Muslims.
invisible enemy. So
Yeah,
it's like there always has to be a bad man and
yeah.
to scare us into like submission and compliance.
Well,
And
I always say it
like
on my show. I read all the time. Fear equals control.
yeah,
That's it.
yeah. Mhm. Because they sell you the they sell you that they're actually looking out for your safety and things, and we're all just like, yeah, give it to us. So, and then you end up having freedoms taken away from you. Like, it's one thing I can't really comment much on, but I've heard plenty of people say that before 9/11, it was a whole different way of like we lived so more freely. But
Yeah.
I was like 13 at the time of that, so I can't really comment. But I mean, for me, probably only the airports would be
I
the
mean,
main one. Like,
I remember the 90s. The 90s was the last great decade. That was
mm,
before the whole bottom fell out, because once 9/11 happened, that's when I think they started implementing their plan of total dominance and control. And
mhm,
it's spoon-fed, little bit by little bit by little bit, and it's starting to come to a head now. They're starting to be icing on the cake, and they're starting to really
mhm,
show their colors. It's just frustrating because you can't get people to see it. But
yeah,
once you take that red pill, once you just taste it a little bit, then you start to recognize everything. And I think we've had this discussion before. Sometimes it's disheartening because
yeah,
I know I can't watch news or anything. I cannot just simply be entertained without seeing right through their agendas and the things that they do to
mhm,
try to brainwash and manipulate. And it's little stuff. It's
yeah,
little seeds that they plant into your head to get society to be closed-minded on this kind of stuff. And they don't
yeah,
want to. Well, don't. There's a reason why the Rothschilds are not out there.
yeah,
They don't want you to know what they're doing, right? You can't find anything on these
mhm,
people in modern day, anything, but yet
yeah.
they run the world.
But if they're worth as much as what was it, allegedly 500 trillion,
Right.
they wouldn't want to be out there. They've got their puppets running the show for them. They're pulling the strings.
Yeah.
So yeah, so to me, what we are saying, if you think about it, it is common sense, really. It's like it's an evil way of thinking, but it's common sense. If you're an evil person and you know these tactics work, you're going to keep doing it. And
Mm.
I always battle with myself thinking like, if you were ever in a position where like you were offered like basically like this is the one I always think, if I was if someone came up to me and said, look, there's a secret way of not being able to pay tax, but if I tell you you can't tell anyone for the rest of your life but you'll never pay, like I'd be so tempted to take it. And you, that's how you have to think. Like these little pieces for me, these are just when I'm welding away at work, I'm thinking of things like this. And I think these are the more better ways to talk to people that aren't maybe awake to this stuff, because it kind of puts into prospect as how these how people can be controlling the world. It's so far fetched to some people, but that's how it starts. Yeah. So the last subject we've got to touch on, and this is the nitty gritty part. I don't really like talking about this, but I think it's key because we're talking about this family. A lot of people in the listening and that will start to maybe think that we're being anti-Semitic talking about this family because of the fact that they're Jewish, and it's not the case. We're talking about this family because we believe that they're key to the way the world's run. Their wealth shows that, and some of the things that they're doing and have done with the Battle of Waterloo. You can check that out for yourselves. But for me, is it needs to be said because I, for one, I'm not racist towards any person, whether their color or their race. Um, if you've done a bad thing, if you've murdered someone, it's the last thing I care about. You're a bad person. It's just, that's the sole reason that you know. So
Well, people don't
um,
need to take offense to things. They need to understand, like, and I wish this is the big, big, big separation that you have in this country right now. Like, I could come to you and say 75% of violent crimes in America are committed by African American males, and that's racist. No, that's not racist. That's just the truth. That's just the simple fact of the matter. If you don't want to recognize that fact and that truth, then you'll never be able to solve that problem. But they create that to where if you say something like this, it's just racist. It's just dismissed immediately instead of digging into the root of the problem. We're not
yeah,
being anti-Semitic here and just being racist towards Jews. We're just bringing up the problem. Hey, this is what your culture has done and does. There's a reason why people don't like Zionism, which is basically, the collection of land for Jewish culture to call home. You know, these are why. There's a reason why people get upset about Zionism and about, because what the Israelis are doing and what the Jews are doing is creating right now today. It's genocide. They're murdering people by the droves, and they're getting away with it because, oh, they're Jewish. They're Jewish sweethearts. We can't really get mad at them, especially here in the States. You cannot talk bad about Israel or the Jews, especially to conservatives. But it's a point, though. I mean, it's just a fact of the matter. We could sit here. It's not that we're being racist or mean or hateful towards Jewish people, but facts are facts.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like, that's just the simple fact of it.
I mean, I'm sure, obviously, at the very start when I mentioned that they were held in the CIA website as one of the 13 bloodlines, and they are regarded as one of the 5 richest families in the world. I mean, that's the real reason why we're doing tonight's show. And it just so happens that they've got a big hand in Waterloo and things. And I think they're a real interesting family to talk about.
But I do believe that the Jewish culture, that their Jewish nature and their background has something to do with their actions. When you go all the way back to the beginning and how they operated and how we talked about how, you know, the Jewish community was into money, which was considered a dirty job at the time, which was considered, and they're sly human beings. They're very slick. They're very smart. They're very witty. They know how to operate with money. Like you said, it could be in their blood. I believe it is. I believe it's just in their blood to have that. So, I mean, there's something to being Jewish. Mm-hmm. There is a connection there. You know, this family is a Jewish family, and they have been for a long time. There's a reason. There's just a connection with why every president goes and wears a yarmulke and kisses the Temple Mount. You know what I mean? There's a reason for that stuff because they control the world secretly in the shadows. And their Jewish faith has something to do with that. Ever since the beginning of time, the Jews have been very instrumental in shaping our culture and our history. And just because we're recognizing that doesn't mean we're racist in any way.
Yeah. So I said to Steve earlier this week about finding some more modern stuff about the Rothschilds, and I gave him a fair hard time on that one because I knew myself that I couldn't. There wasn't much.
There's nothing.
On it a few times.
It's frustrating. You try to look and dig into what they're doing and what their evil. You try to get one step ahead of them, like you do everybody else. Like I know I do. I try to play chess with these elitists and try to follow their path. Rothschilds, nothing. You will find like hardly anything at all.
Yeah. The only thing I had to add on that was that they've since married into, and again, it must be a female Rothschild married into these families because, as we know, that the men had to marry within the family, and that they've married into the Hilton family, the Hilton hotels, the Guinness World Records, you know that family, the Guinness family, and they've also married into the Goldsmith family. So wealth again, just increasing that wealth and family dynasty.
I swear, I don't think at this point, I don't even think it's about wealth to these people anymore. I think it's just like I said earlier, I think it's just a game to them because they control everything. They know exactly what they're doing. They control all the world's wealth. They have all the power in the world. They could bomb a country like that. These presidents that we think that we're electing for our country to represent us and everything, we're not electing these people. The election in 2016, trust me, if they didn't want Donald Trump being president, he would not have been. This most recent election, as crazy as it was, if they didn't want it to be crazy, it wouldn't have been. If they didn't want Biden to be president, he wouldn't have been. They know everything that they're doing, and that's the frustration. Mm-hmm. That's why it needs to be exposed because whoever controls the money controls the world, and they control the money.
Presidents are selected, not elected.
Right, exactly.
Yeah. So, in following with our show title, I'm going to ask you, Penny, for your thoughts, Steve. What do you think about the Rothschilds? Do you think the information we've brought up tonight is factual and true, or do you think it's a lot of rubbish?
Well, I think it was we brought up a lot of good points. I think 110% this family in particular, along with other elitists out there, are controlling the world. They are controlling the world through the money. They have so much money, it's unbelievable. They can bankrupt countries at a whim. They could get countries to fight. They can divide us. They pump a lot of money into their projects that they have, especially here in the States, where you see a lot of cities being riots and looting going on and division. And every time there's a major event, I think that we really, really need to pay attention at it before we start to fight over it, because that's exactly what they want us to do. There's no doubt in my mind that these elitists know and are in control of every aspect of our lives, from media to, events. They use the media in major way. They know how to use the media to manipulate people and get people on one side or the other. Like if you look at, white cops killing, unarmed black males, all of a sudden it conveniently stops. It stopped. Once the election was over, there's no more white cops out there killing, unarmed black males anymore. Like it almost immediately just stopped immediately. You have to look at these things and pay attention and understand exactly what they have to gain from it, and you have to recognize these events immediately. I do, and sometimes it's frustrating because I can't get through to anybody else, because I think a large majority of the population is still asleep to the fact that these people are running the world and they want these events to happen. They want these horrible things to take place. You look at coronavirus right now and all the control they're gaining from it and all the power that they're gaining from it. They literally have us walking around with muzzles on our face for a 99% survival rate. They have us getting vaccines that people are passing out from and dying from. Or getting sick and having all these side effects. We need to pay attention. Undoubtedly, 100%, penny for my thoughts, these people are running the world. And I hope that people watch this and get a little bit of information and open their eyes to it and start to dig into it and do your own research. Pay attention, folks. That's my thing. Your thoughts?
Well said, Steve, about the do your own research, because that's basically what this podcast is about. We're just going to do a bit of research on any topic. And also feel free to give us some topics that you wish us to look into. We've got a list and we're going to get through them every Sunday night. But my thoughts are mirrored yours, basically. I think the only thing that I'll maybe concede is the whole one of five richest family in the world. Obviously, there is another four, and we'll look into those also at a later date. But for me, the Battle of Waterloo is the big one. It's factual. You can look that up, guys. It's not too far away. I know 200 years ago it is, but you can look this stuff up. Their names are over everything. I think when I mentioned that in 1989, Evelyn de Rothschild was appointed head of the finance for the Queen of England not so long ago, and you can look that up. And if they're basically holding the purse strings for the UK, the Queen of England, their names are over everything. And for me, it's a definite. They're controlling the narrative. They're controlling companies, the media, and yeah, I'm sold. It's definitely a yes for me.
It's 100% sold.
Yep.
There's no doubt about it. And like we said, do your own research and do your own stuff out there. And, get out there and look, man. Open your eyes, dig into this stuff, because you need to know. You need to try to understand. If anything, you need to understand so you don't say things that you shouldn't say, or get upset about things, or get worked up about things that they make you get worked up and upset about. A lot of world's problems today would be solved if you would just flip off the TV and go out and talk to your neighbors and go out and just be friendly to people. You would understand that we live in a much more friendlier world than what they lead you to believe.
Yeah. I know I touched it in our introduction podcast we done, but for me, this stuff is way more interesting than the rubbish that we're getting shown on our TVs. Learning about the Rothschild family, not only them, but there's so many conspiracies out there. And I advise anyone, like I said at the start, choose this one to start off, because it gives you a background and it makes you understand it.
Right.
I think a lot of people believe that like Donald Trump is the head of America. He's making the big decisions, and Boris Johnson, the idiot, is making our decisions. Like, no way. There has to be someone pulling the strings. And
yeah, definitely. No doubt about it. And hopefully through this show and through our research, and I know you did a lot of research on this one in particular. I did a little bit, but you definitely did the bulk of it here. But my hope is people will go out there and do the research and dig into it, it's harder to find a lot of stuff on the internet now because of the control of the information and stuff. But if you do enough digging, you can find some stuff. Libraries still exist, believe it or not. You know, go out there. I had a old friend that used to say, dial the number, Steve, dial the number. And what he meant by that is don't just hit, you know, the contact and send, dial the number out so you remember it, right? And it was kind of an analogy to me, because nowadays we just want the source information. We Google something, bang, there's the information. When you read a book and you're looking for a piece of information, you get all the other information that you never expected to get. So go out there and read and do the information, dial the number, get it in your brain, okay? Because we live in a world now where we just want it, bang, there it is, and we don't absorb anything. You gotta absorb the information. If you want to truly be red pilled, if you truly want to understand how the world works, go out there and absorb the information.
I like that one. Dial the number.
Yeah, I mean, well, he did. He was an older guy, and we used to talk a lot about different stuff, you know, Freemasons and things like that. But he was big. He was really, really big on absorbing the information. And this was this was before, you know, the age of the internet. And I see it a lot now where we just want the source. That's all we want. We just want the piece. We don't want to know everything about what we're studying. We just want that one critical piece of information. And we end up losing a lot of information and not storing stuff into these wonderful tools that God gave us called our brain. And we end up being mummified, like zombified. We end up just turning our brains into mush and like, oh, Jersey Shore is on. Like you said, you know, this stuff is a lot more interesting. You're going to gain a lot more knowledge about how the world works from this than you are from The Fucking View or Jersey Shore. That shit turns your brain into mush. Pay attention, folks.
And it helps as well. It's like, especially I know we're not going to do a podcast on COVID because we want to keep our podcast going for a long time. But
yeah,
I think knowing this stuff, it's definitely helped me with life decisions, like knowing what their plan is and their agenda, and being able to avoid that. And it's probably the best. Like I say, I've been in the conspiracy game for like 2-3 years now. And it's the longest kind of hobby, I'll say, that I've had, because normally I'm the kind of guy that will pick up a hobby and 6 months later I'm on to something new. But
yeah,
I'm hooked
I think
on
most of us are.
Information. Yeah, I'm just hooked on learning the information of history, basically. Yeah.
Yeah, just, you know, dig into it. There's people. There's a whole lot of people out there that are waking up to this stuff, and they want the information. And it's harder and harder to get it, but hopefully through this show you can get a little bit of it, because we do our research here and we do try to pay attention to stuff. And we just want to wake the world up a little bit.
Yeah.
And what better way to start than with the people who control it, right?
Yeah, definitely.
So good show. We had a really good show today, and I'm happy with the results of this one. And make sure you guys keep an eye out and look for our future projects. We have other shows every week. We're going to drop a show on Penny for Your Thoughts. Make sure you check us out on Facebook, on YouTube. We're going to be on BitChute. We're going to be on Anchor. We're going to have our podcast out there, a little bit of everywhere. And you can just search Penny for Your Thoughts and check out our latest stuff. And by all means, contact us, message us on Facebook, or contact us on Penny. It's at Penny4 Thoughts @gmail.com, and I'll put this up there so you guys can see it. Contact us and let us know what you want to hear us, let us know what you would like to hear us talk about, and let us know, like I said, like Ian said, we have a list. We have a long list of shows. We have plenty of material to do, and I think we got a really good show here, and I think people are going to start waking up and watching us and enjoying what we have to talk about.
Yeah, we're also on Instagram. Same again, Penny for Your Thoughts. We're also looking for guests to come on if you've been into any conspiracies, or we're going to do serial killers. We're going to do politics. We're going to touch on pretty much anything.
We have to do aliens, Ian. We have to do
aliens. I know. But I'm not looking forward to aliens. I've always avoided it, but we will do it. I'll
people love aliens.
I know, people love it. Our show will probably go through the roof when we do aliens. It'll be promoted by YouTube themselves. They'll love to promote aliens. So yeah, we'll do that for sure. But follow us, message us if you want to hear something. Also, if we get anything wrong, if you think we've been factually incorrect, message us. We'll address it on the next show.
Right.
because we certainly don't want to be putting wrong information out there. We're doing this research unbiasedly, and we
And if
can
we
only
get
grow.
definitely contact us with anything you got or whatever. If you think, hey, this is wrong, or hey, you need to put this in there, or hey, we like this subject. Why don't you guys talk about this? Whatever. Definitely reach out and contact us, and then hopefully we can grow enough of an audience and people will enjoy us enough that we might even be able to throw on a live show every once in a while and
Yeah.
talk to you directly as we're doing this. We don't know, that's in the future, but
Mhm.
definitely reach out with any corrections or anything that you think was wrong. Or and if, like Ian said, if you're an expert in some of the world of conspiracy, or you know a lot and you want to come on, we would love to hear from you. We are looking for interviews out there for people who want to come on and interview with us. We do
Mhm.
interviews via Skype, and we would love to have you guys on.
Yeah.
So that's all I got. Are you all done?
Yeah, I'm all done.
All right.
Great
Thank you
show.
guys. Thank you guys out there for watching the show. Thank you guys for being a part of Penny for Your Thoughts. Hopefully you guys can check us out every week at Penny for Your Thoughts. We are on YouTube, BitChute, Facebook, Instagram. You can find us out there. Just look for the logo on the bottom little right-hand screen. Hopefully you guys enjoyed it, and we'll see you back next week, right?
Yeah. Cheers, Steve.
See you, man. Have a wonderful afternoon.
You too.